True.
I am on it then. Welcome, greetings, good greetings, whatever the right way to say it is. We need mental warm up. I need one. Tom, do you got the medicine?
I do. I got it. I got the cure. All right. So today, this is kind of a nice warm up to remind us or a cue to our purpose. Why do all of your organizations exist? Why do we want to come together as a coalition? So you can take it down, Adam. I think the question for us to answer is, can you think of any sort of anecdotal story of a person that you have worked with? You don't have to use their names, but maybe just a circumstance that they used or participated in one of your programs and you saw a transformation. I think that's a really good way to kind of keep our purpose in front of us. So does anybody have a great story they'd like to share? Oh, good. Hey, Bev, go.
Good morning. We just had this, we just talked about this in our team meeting this morning, in our leadership team meeting. As you know, we have volunteers that go into the schools once a week and read with students, and have for the last 12 years. It was shared this morning that there is a gentleman that one of our friends of Lead to Read met at a meeting, and he's an engineer, and he's was at a UMKC meeting, and he was talking about how that when he was in elementary school at Whittier Elementary, which was our first school that we started Lead to Read, he had a mentor, and he said he could remember that mentor's name, and he was empowered by the book that that person gave him on engineering, and when he was in elementary school. And that his mentor signed the book. He still has the book, and that was such a powerful thing for him to go on to college and become an engineer. And I thought, wow, that is so important that we as a community are impacting kids when they're young and showing them what the importance of literacy is.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. I love that you have an example of how someone's life was totally transformed um, by a book. That's awesome. Anybody else have anything?
Story. We have, of course, there's always so many things that are happening that we never know about, but every once in a while you get to hear like the end of something. So we had an older gentleman that's older than 65 plus that came through one of our computer literacy classes, which is open to the general public. While he was there, our computer literacy instructor, she always just spreads the word about all the different things that we have going on at Literacy KC. And so he had expressed to her that he was a writer and that he wanted to go to college, and he had all these dreams and hopes. And so from there, she got him connected with our workforce development department, and then we connected him with EOC. He applied for his financial aid, and he's currently in college right now, just pursuing his writing dreams. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Our fire alarm's going off. So Adam, I'm going to let you continue this and I'm going to figure out what's going on
You
here.
bet. All right,
Sorry.
be safe. Yeah, do it. All right. Yeah. So, others examples. Yeah, please, Linda.
We have a Readings Everywhere program where we have baskets of free children's books. And one of our locations is One City Cafe, connected with Bishop Sullivan Center. So it's a food pantry, but the idea is you eat communally, and pre-COVID, but they're kind of getting back to it. You know, people come in and they get their food and they sit down and they're served restaurant style. And they have a lot of repeat clients. And one of the regular volunteers that manages the book basket said that she had a mom with a second grader who was asking for books about helping to teach that child to read. So we were sending over, some of those kind of decodable books. And then she said, I'm just not getting as far as I want to, does Lead to Read offer tutoring? And at the time, we were coming out of online learning and schooling, and the mom felt like the daughter was probably going to be diagnosed with ADHD. So we didn't think our online program would be the best in that situation, but I was able to partner her up with a funder, an outside funder outside of Lead to Read. And the child got 30 hours of free tutoring that summer and was able to start the next grade level on grade level. And the child's teacher had told the mom at the end of the school year, we really do need to hold her back because she's not reading on a second grade level, but we're going to send her on anyway. So the mom was pretty frustrated. So it kind of just started with just a basket of books. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, these are powerful. Yeah, other examples that you've experienced or seen or witnessed of where this literacy works really made a difference in an individual.
I have something to share. We have a literacy initiative called the Read 360. So it helps to increase literacy from birth to the teenage years by focusing on the communities. And one of our literacy council members, she had dropped out of school from, I don't know, some time back, but as she joined our council, she just kind of, I guess, it reignited that love of learning and the reason why. And she has returned back to school within the last year, and she only has one more semester to complete.
It's good. And what do you think the impact will be?
Man, with her own kids, for one, most definitely, just showing them, to me, that anything is possible, no matter where you are in life. Literacy is important, educating oneself, and just pursuing your dreams. So, but also within her community, because she was in a really bad car accident a couple of years back, so she was paralyzed. So she's had a lot of things happen in her life, but she is, to me, just being a great example of anything is possible. So the impact, I think, is going to be great in so many ways.
Mm, mm. Wonderful. Good. Yeah. Can we get one more before we move on? All right, no worries. There's many stories abounding on the impact that we can make. All right, that was a great warm up. Let's get into the format for the day, what we're going to be doing. So every meeting should has a purpose, and every purpose has intended outcomes. And to reach intended outcomes, we need methods. So speaking of methods, that is our focus. So I've left it up here. Today's theme is about really, trying to finish up our methods. So I'm willing to add or edit anything here in terms of why it matters. And then we can get a little bit to it, what outcomes we'd want to see from today. And I don't know, it might help you to see the agenda first. It's, it's been a couple weeks, right? So let me just get to that. And this agenda is completely editable. So this does not drive what we do. We can change it. So I was gonna say it doesn't drive the agenda, but it is the agenda. So yeah, it does. But we could change the agenda. So yeah, the idea would be that basically today's meetings are the 4 groups to present their gear. That's kind of, I should put a quote around it. Their factor or their strategy would be other words for it. And then for the rest of the group to kind of dialogue around it. We do expect to have a visitor at around 11:15. So, oops, didn't mean to switch that up. Yep. So, maybe, yeah, if anybody wants to clarify what we'd like to see happen there, and then we will have a break, and then from there. So that's the agenda for today. So based on that, what are some of the outcomes that would make it effective meeting?
I'd like to see us come to a consensus on, I don't know what like a reasonable number of methods would be for, just having looked at them all together once, but have at least a handful that were like, definitely, yes, we want that to be on our list.
Good. Perfect. Thank you. Does that capture it? Any others? Outcomes for today that would reflect our focus and why it matters?
I think sort of clarity of language and meaning, but across each of the 4 working groups contributions, make sure that we all really understand where each group was coming from and how they're phrasing things.
That's great. Clarity of and alignment on. All right, good. Thank you. Any other outcomes from today, please? Any outcomes we'd like to see from Andrea's visit?
I think Kristen will have some update there as well, because I know that she and Jillian, and I don't know, Kate, I know a few of you are participating in a larger group to kind of talk about the work that's being done there with the Royals.
Okay, good. Well, is that what's the name of that group specifically?
The advisory committee to the Royals Charities, or Royals, they're now called the Royals Foundation. I can also update on our latest check-in with School Smart.
Cool. Any other outcomes? That's great, by the way. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be spending a lot of time on having the groups present their gears in discussion. So I definitely think clarity of and alignment on the language across the 4 gears. Anything else related to those groups or gears? Main strategies? Very cool. All right. So then, yeah, this will be our agenda for today. We're a little ahead of schedule to get into our conversation about the Muse outreach. Who will be facilitating that part?
Yeah, I can hop in. Again, this is really just like more of a check-in, like, hey guys, how's it going? Since we asked you to do some research on muses and potentially reach out. So yeah, would love an update from anybody who's been following that thread.
Excuse me. Sorry. I reached out to Siobhan with the Center for Grade Level Learning. Just with Terry Barnes, our interim director, asked me, what's our role in this group? And I was like, well, I attend their webinars. So it was helpful. She spent a lot of time with us kind of explaining the coalition and talked about how there are 350 community organizations around the country, and that Turn the Page is the local lead for the work of the center, and also talked about their Everyday Places and Spaces initiative, which we're a member of as well. So it was really useful. She talked about their dashboard, which I hadn't interacted really with. So there's a lot there. So I'm excited about that. I feel like it's like I've just opened a treasure chest of information. So that was good. And she as part of that, connected us with Jenny from Read by Fourth, which Kristen had talked about. She's connected with as well. So Jenny's probably like, why do people from Kansas City keep bothering me? But just to have a kind of an understanding of, different things. So it was useful.
Are there any takeaways that you think are like really important for the group to know, or areas where you like recommend that we look more deeply?
I guess it just kind of really it kind of plugged into then, you know, Lauren and I met on Friday and talked about our methods, and, you know, kind of a lot of that was in my head when we were meeting, in terms of focus areas and their planning, and their kind of their funding structure a little bit. So
All right, awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Updates on
I
uses?
sorry, April. I made a new connection on it was last Thursday. I attended the coalition-wide meeting for the Diverse Books for All coalition that Turn the Page KC is a part of. And one of the new coalition members is from a collective impact organization in New York City called Cities First Readers. And they are just like us, a group of nonprofits that are combining their resources. And I got some contact information, and I'm looking forward to learning more about their structure. And I put a link to their website in the chat.
Oh, cool. So to be clear, you haven't been able to set up a meeting with them yet, but
No,
you're
this is
interested.
I didn't have a muse, and now I found a muse to
Oh,
follow up
yay.
on.
That's great. I love it. Discovering muses. Awesome. Yeah, I'll not waste your time scrolling through the website, but yeah, it looks really interesting. Anybody else? Any other muses? Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing homework assignment, guys. So like Lauren is a very good example of, you know, if you come across organizations that strike you as, hey, this might actually, you know, for one reason or another, you know, be a useful organization for us to learn from, whether in terms of literacy, in terms of how they work organizationally, in terms of their experience with coalitions or collective impact. So just keep an eye out, because it's really helpful, and can really accelerate our learning to see what others have done.
And I just want to piggyback on that, because I think that I'm thinking more and more of coalitioning as an activity, you know, that people can, and because it's an activity, that means you can be various levels of effective or good at it. So you can get better at it. And I don't know, just thinking of it this way could be, yeah, it's a skill and a practice. It really is, but we don't really think of it that way. You know what we get skills and practice in? Doing our own thing. You know, kind of the opposite of coalition. You know, we built, and I don't mean it's not really the opposite, but it's more isolated. It's I'm building my own program. You know, and so what happens is you have a bunch of organizations building their own programs, and what lacks is a community coherence around whatever that issue is. And so coalitioning is a new skill, and I think and the practice absolutely is part of it. That's what you have to practice it, and we're doing that now. And muses are a way to help you gain proficiency faster, learning from others' experience. So I really think it's a great thing to keep doing. Coalition.
Sort of to that point, I thought I'd kind of just put out there, you know, Turn the Page KC became the lead, I guess. We lead, but there aren't any others. It's like because we were the only member in Missouri for the campaign for grade level reading when we started. Since that time, an organization kicked off that is our sister organization, Turn the Page St. Louis. I would say she is actually the lead from Missouri, because she does a way better job of staying connected into the coalition than I do. But there are many, I mean, you heard the number, 350 across the country. So there are many states that have 30 or 40 different partners for the campaign, because you can. And you know, it's not an exclusive thing. There's no payment. It's just, if you want to be part of it, you can go through whatever the hoops are to be part of it. So I would really, you know, recommend that if any of your organizations have an interest, like, we would be thrilled to have more Missouri entities, and especially those that go beyond Kansas City. to really jump into that and reap the benefits of the awareness and the information that gets distributed. So if I can provide any information, I'd be happy to do that for any of your organizations or for us as a group if we get to that point of, you know, being a coalition within a coalition.
Very cool. Thank you, Kristen. Well, I think this might actually be a good time for you, Kristen, to give your updates, if that's all right.
Sure. So let me get the right notes in front of me. I met a week and a half ago with Angelique from School Smart. It was just the timing for our next check-in visit to see how things are going. In general, everything was very, very positive. She is really excited about the work we're doing and the progress we're making. So what we did together was just pull the original grant agreement out and step through the outputs and outcomes one by one to talk about where we were with those pieces. Most of the opening pieces we had completely finished that, and that included making this process happen, getting all the MOUs signed for everybody to take part, all of that. So then we started talking through kind of the work we're doing right now, which was really solidifying our purpose and our outcomes and our methods. And she was very excited about the fact that, at least as I shared it, there seemed to be really consistent engagement across the board from everybody, that all organizations were really consistently represented, and that people seemed to feel really comfortable taking part really openly and sharing and contributing. So that's exciting. We dove in a little bit to the work that we're still doing right at the moment, which is the methods, which she's very interested in. And through her questions, I think I'm able to bring back a few ideas of things that might gain some traction and be of interest outside of our group. In particular, she asked about our progress in thinking about some sort of dashboard and data. So I was able to share with her that that was one of our 4 methods working groups, and that we were just kind of getting started on thinking about that. But what interested me a lot is that she shared a thought that we had discussed in that subcommittee last time on data around, you know, what other kinds of data are out there that we're not considering that shape our understanding more than maybe the test scores that we tend to focus on so much. And in particular, she asked a very focused question around did I think that this group would be interested in some sort of family interviews as a data point? And I tried to not jump out of my chair as I said, yes, I'm pretty sure that there would be a lot of interest there. And coming at that from lots of different angles, because our organizations come at literacy from a lot of different angles. So we didn't get into a lot of detail about it, but I think that would be a really interesting conversation to take back to her and follow up and see what she's thinking. And then on a broader kind of note, she discussed the fact that she is working to put together a broader funding group around literacy in Kansas City. I didn't get details in terms of who those funders are. I could guess, and I'm sure I'd hit some, but so could all of you. But in my mind, as she was explaining it, it sounded to me a very parallel to what happened a few years back with the the pre-K and the ECE funding collaborative where funders wanted to be working more in cooperation with each other around funding rather than everybody operating in silos. And so I think that that is coming. I don't know exactly what it will look like, but it sounds to me as though there are funders who are interested in working more collaboratively. There is support from the Royals Foundation around information, getting information out to the community. And it's my sense that at least School Smart sees us as a third parallel piece to that of bringing the information, the methods, the ideas into that work. So it felt incredibly positive and like it's moving forward in a way that complements other work being done in the city. So, Adam, was there anything else we chatted about that I need to share?
Nothing that I'm thinking of. Anybody else? Or any questions on any of that? I have a sort of like a quite just I'd like to know the significance of the family interviews. I think I can kind of guess that, but I'd like to understand more fully what the excitement behind it. Like, has it not been done before? Is this a best practice? Yeah, just tell me, what can it give us?
Well, I'll share my view, but I'm sure others have opinions too that I'd love to hear. It came up in our conversation in the context of my comments that there are a whole lot of factors in the system that we know impact literacy. They just don't impact it directly. You know, we tend to look at data that looks at those direct impacts. What's going on in the classroom, what's going on with attendance at school. But we know that trauma impacts it. We know that family access to any number of variables impacts. We know health impacts it. We know neighborhood safety impacts it. You know, there's so much that we know is true, but it's hard to get data that shows it's true because it goes through so many layers to get to something that we consider the literacy number. And so I think it's really just she used the phrase family interviews. I think it's just her way of approaching a more qualitative look at, you know, what's the whole picture? What's the whole picture of the child and literacy generationally across the lifespan of the child? It's a big picture to paint.
And also just to jump in really quickly on that, it's, you know, even though like state test scores are what laws are based off of, that they're what donors are used to looking at for, you know, in terms of funding and that kind of thing, but they are a very flawed metric. And there's more and more research showing that they don't really necessarily, especially when it comes to literacy, they don't measure proficiency, they measure privilege, and they measure like what kind of support system and what kind of resources are available in your community. So having something that is more is doing a better job to paint the picture of what's actually going on in communities, and maybe in a way that we can find some numbers that aren't based on a flawed metric, that would be really exciting.
Lauren, did you share that article that you shared with us with this broader group?
You're on mute.
I don't think I did, but I can put that in Basecamp, the Forbes article.
That'd be great. Yeah, it's probably concepts you've heard before over decades of time, but it just revisits, you know, a look nationally at reading test score data and what we consistently see in it that speaks to what Lauren was just talking about.
And this really does describe the strategy here. Now this isn't just gathering data and evaluating. You're saying we want to gather holistic data. We want to gather data that hasn't been used before, that tells a story that or gives us information we haven't had access to before. So it's almost like you're pioneering an approach to literacy data, perhaps. Or maybe to say that you want to develop a holistic approach to literacy, measuring literacy. All right, any other feedback or questions from any of the updates? All right, because then what will happen is we want to start hearing from the groups. I put a few slides into, I don't know if it's helpful or not, but just to kind of, you know, prime the pump a little bit or just remind us about our journey, our purpose. And then our outcomes, and then the methods for how we'll get there. Of course, this is just a template. So then we've basically, not so thick of a marker. All right. So then, you know, this is basically it again, purpose, and this is outcomes. And then these are the four main strategies or factors necessary for producing these outcomes. The idea being as we turn these dials, get them more into alignment, get them more developed, that if these are the right dials or gears or factors, then they will start producing the desired outcomes we want to see. And then I drew it a little differently. This might be a little hard on the eyes, but I just wanted to show, you know, our strategies lead to our tactics lead to actions, and then our actions are what produce outcomes. So that's kind of the idea here. And that really any organization is a collection of many, many, many actions, hopefully not motions, which is what a lot of organizations do. They do things that cost resources, but may not actually produce the desired outcomes. So yeah, basically what we're hoping to do next is just have the first group present their gear and have some group discussion on it. So yeah, let's.
Does everybody remember which group they're in? What number? Oh, great. Okay. So group 1, who are you?
Sustainable coalition structure.
I wonder if that was my group. Sorry, I don't recall.
Do you remember who was in your group?
No.
Okay. Well, I know Jillian was in that group, but she's not here today. Kimberly, do you know if Jillian, I guess she's not planning to make it today.
No, she's on the road this morning, headed out of town. So.
Trying to look for her.
See, I can pull up what we had.
Are these in the working docs, April?
Yes. You go into, yeah, docs and files, working docs, methods, small groups is at least the last draft that we worked on together. So yeah, group 1 was sustainable coalition structure. Does this look familiar to you, Tina?
Yes. Man, I'm sorry, 2 weeks was a long time. We didn't get together over this last 2 weeks.
Okay, well, we can just maybe skip this one for now. And if we have time at the end, we can come back and try to talk through it.
Okay.
Okay. Well, group 2. This looks
That's
like
me.
Jimmy and Jitem, yeah.
So we kind of just drilled down a little bit on the things that we talked about before. Muses was one of our topics. And we were talking about finding mentors and muses that are local and national. So continuing to do that. Some tactics that we talked about was to create maybe a research group. So we can kind of build a list of those national organizations, or create a list of local influencers or businesses or groups that might contribute to this. And then we talked a little bit about field trips and who's going to do that to go to the different people that we brainstormed about. A lot of what we kind of talked about with our tactics is just identifying. The next one was the building strategic partnerships with organization within and outside the sector. And the tactics that we talked about there were, again, identifying people that are listed above. I'm not going to read those to you. You can do that. And how we can increase our reach and our resources by talking to the proper people. So I think identifying them is a really key first step. And then creating a document with defining roles and responsibilities and measures, and which is what hopefully the strategic plan is going to shape into. Creating a budget. We need to do a budget so our partners know what to expect. And then just provide direction for the next steps. Tap into our existing national affiliations that we already have within the group, and maybe some that identifying team members that could do this, number one, and then members that are maybe already part of the national organizations or part of different organizations, like Kristen was talking about. I can give a report on that. Being part of those things. A lot of the people that are in this group right here sit on 1,000 different committees that could relate, like the MARC, and things like that. So figuring out what treasures do we have already, and then reaching out for identifying and reaching out for maybe things to add. And then advocacy, we did talk a little bit about advocacy. And a lot of this was identifying group leaders from our team internally that are strong in this. A lot of Jitem and I were talking about a lot of nonprofits kind of step back from advocacy. And so who in our group steps forward, and what does that look like, as just some basic education for our group, for our entire team. And then creating a toolkit for maybe our partners. This is how you can help by doing this, this, and this. And here's some resources. And then just creating an advocacy plan. And then just talking about who will our partners be. We talked about a few funders. Our tactics is, kind of to create the strategic plan around partners as well, identifying their strengths and roles, responsibilities, and again, creating a budget that is financial, but it is also what kind of time commitment is that going to look like. So that's what we got.
Great, thank you so much for presenting. So it looks like kind of the major components under partnership, what we kind of call like the smaller gears under the big gear of strategy, are muses, building strategic partnerships, tapping into existing national affiliations, advocacy, and then, the strategizing who the partners will be, I think kind of feeds into all of this as well. Maybe partnership recruitment. So yeah, I'd love reactions from the group on any aspect of this. We can kind of go wherever the interest is, but one kind of structured way to look at this is like last time, are we considering everything that we need to consider under partnerships in order to turn this gear? Are we accounting for all of the factors that we need to account for in this and under this strategy? So looking for gaps could be one way to answer, or if you have a specific idea for any of the smaller tactics, that's also totally in zone. So I'm going to kind of let you guys, I can help facilitate the conversation, but as you'll see, these conversations are going to be much more about you guys talking and hashing out than it is about us, facilitating. So any reactions?
A couple of things. I'm excited about this literacy czar in the mayor's office idea. I think that it would be really useful to have lots of champions of what we're doing, but in particular, one person that's like, always banging the gong or whatever. And then when Lauren and I met, we were talking about where school districts fit, where universities fit. And I wonder, we weren't sure, are they going to be partners? Are we really just focusing on a community effort that doesn't involve the schools? And how do we tap into, the expertise of family and engagement people in the districts, within Kansas City? Like, what have you done that seems to be working? And, what are your challenges? And so they really feel like, they're part of what's going on. So I guess my thought would be they would be added on a partnership level, once we're finished with this 6-month process, that and really approaching, school districts and charters and the local colleges to get them involved in some way.
Great. And did I hear you correctly that tapping into their family engagement is part of? So that's okay.
Yeah, and
So
just figuring
schools.
that they they have every school has a family engagement person, and some are more successful than others, and what have they found to be things that seem to move the needle they just don't have the funds for, or the manpower for, people power for, and helping them feel like, oh, this is really cool, you're going to help what we're doing, we can help what you're doing. And so they feel more of a partner and not like, oh, so you're looking at what we're doing and seeing that it's not working, so you're creating something else.
Great. Any reactions to that idea of adding schools and school districts and universities to the list of partners?
And I guess, sorry, and one thing that does is like parents as teachers, I think falls under school districts. And I think that's pretty important for us to latch into, especially if we end up with an initiative that's really focused on getting kids school ready.
Linda, that was one of the questions. I wasn't able to join Jenny and Jitem, but we kind of had a chat about some of these things that they were going to talk about. And that was one of the things I brought up, was like how to get educators on board, if the district itself doesn't have leaders at the table, like who is it within those systems that we need to be contacting. I like the idea of family support, partially because they're not the ones embedded in classrooms, and they may have a better perspective of, what's successful or what's not successful. But I just know that that's something that it's probably because of my background in education, but this whole time I've been like, it kind of feels like there's somebody missing from this conversation. And, Jitem had a good point that like, I think we've all had connections at district level or school levels that have gone, maybe not been successful. Like there's just a lot happening with the school district. There's a lot of change happening over there. There's a lot of different people, a lot of cooks in that kitchen. And so like I'm trying to figure out, how to be successful with talking about this initiative and trying to figure out who needs to be part of the conversation. So Yeah,
And
I share your concern.
Yeah, and I think too, the fact that family engagement people hopefully aren't as tied up schedule wise, as a classroom. I mean, it'd be great to have reading specialists, I think, but they might have a tighter type of schedule. But your family engagement people should have some open times in their day where they could plug into some work.
I do like that idea, on paper. I will say that having worked with their family engagement in some other capacities, like that has been a challenge. There are volunteer, I think if we're talking about the same group of people, they're kind of volunteer basis. So it does present some other challenges with KCPS anyway. I know that it has been challenging to kind of get everybody together for that, but it has some good potential as well.
Good. Yeah, I want to wear my time manager hat for a moment. We have a guest and it's that time in our agenda. So Tom, let me turn it over to you or introduce our guest and take it from there.
Yeah, we'd like to welcome Andrea Ellis from the Royals and the Royals Literacy Partnership, just to give us an update on everything that's happening. And we can certainly provide you, Andrea, with an update on our end on kind of where we're at. I think you just heard some of the conversation about outcomes, or I'm sorry, about the methods. We've really focused on the purpose of the coalition, forming the coalition, the outcomes for a coalition, what we want the coalition to ultimately accomplish. And now we're really drilling into what we call methods, which are the steps to really get us there. And we've been talking about partnerships and external relations. And so that fits really well with what you're here to talk about. Kristen provided an update a little bit about what some of the work that you all have had, but we'd like to welcome you and give you the floor to kind of share. Do you know everybody? Do you need us to do introductions or
I
what would
don't
be
know
helpful?
everybody. I know quite a few folks, but not everybody. Be great.
Yeah, well, let's just do a quick round of introductions. My name is Tom Van Sage. I'm a professor of nonprofit leadership at William Jewell College. And then I'm a consultant along with Adam Seaman and April Gordon, who are we're the co-facilitators for the coalition, and our work will adjourn at the end of March. But Lauren, if you'd like, I'll just kind of call on folks to introduce themselves. Maybe just tell Andrea who you are, who you're with.
I think we've met a couple of times, Andrea, but I'm just a handful. Lauren Olson, Director of Community Programming, Turn the Page KC.
Thank you. Kate Timaeus?
Also known Andrea many years. Kate Timaeus, and the early learning librarian here at the Kansas City Public Library.
Well, I'm gonna call on everybody, even if you
It's okay.
know Andrea, because I'm not sure who knows who. I know you
Right.
probably know Kristen Droege, right?
Yes.
Yep. All right. And then Linda Hughes.
I think we've met once, so no.
Yes. Hi, I'm with Lead to Read KC. I'm the Community Outreach Program Manager. Good to see you again.
You too.
Bev?
Bev Leonard, I'm with Lead to Read, and I am the program manager for the tutoring.
Nice to meet you.
Tina?
Hello, Andrea. My name is Tina Gill. I am the Director of Collective Impact with Collective Impact Initiatives with Turn the Page KC.
Nice to meet you.
You as well.
Great. Jenny?
I am Jenny Horsley. I'm with Reach Out and Read Kansas City. Nice to
Thank
see you
you.
again.
You as well.
Ellen?
Hi, I'm Ellen Shepard and I'm with the Literacy Lab. Sorry, I'm not on camera. I'm in transition right now, but hopefully I'll be back on soon.
Nice to meet you.
No worries. Katie?
Hey, I'm Katie McDonald. I'm with Mid-Continent Public Library, and I think we've chatted a couple of times as well, and I'm the Associate Director of Reader Engagement.
Good to see you.
Awesome. Kimberly?
Hello, I'm Kimberly Simmons with Literacy KC. I'm the College and Career Readiness Coordinator. So it's a pleasure meeting you.
Nice to meet you, Kimberly. My maiden name was Simmons. So.
Okay, and I have a sister named
I was
Andrea. So
related.
this is easy. This is easy.
Somewhere in there. So, all right. Well, yeah, I think, is that everybody?
we are missing a few folks today, like Jillian Helm and Jatem, and I don't know, you probably know some of them, but we're for some reason a little light today.
No worries. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting quite a few people because I spent a decade at the Kansas City Public Library doing learning initiatives, working with youth and really kind of hands-on experiential learning. So it's good to see a lot of you, and then nice to meet the new faces as well. So yeah, I can give you guys an update and hope I'm not redundant if Kristen has already shared this with you, but maybe I'll just go through. We have 3 primary components for this particular initiative. And I always like to start with the reality that this is a pilot, so we came in with some very big dreams to get us through like May. And then we will have to really sit and think about what the future looks like. And so there may be, I think, even stronger ways for us to partner with this group as you guys continue to develop, how you're going to move forward. But the things that I will describe right now are things that are happening like in the immediate right now in this pilot. So the first component, and again, I may be redundant because I may have said this the first time, but I'll kind of tell you where we're at. But the Crown Library, so we're going to be having, the little libraries that you see out in the community. We're going to have one of those at each of the 9 schools that we're partnering with. And so they're about 5 feet tall, a little bit more than 5 feet, because I think they're a little taller than me. And they will be, stocked with books by Turn the Page KC on a monthly basis, at least for the next 3 years for sure. And so the idea there, as with the other little libraries, is you take some, you put some in, you just kind of enjoy it, but they will be on site at the school with the intention that the school will kind of own it and love on it and, help us think through how to expand what that looks like. At each school, there are 2 classrooms that are specifically identified as kind of the partner classrooms. So that gives us 18 classrooms. And so what that means is that for our second component, which is the classroom champions, that is where we're actually connecting a Royals player with a classroom. And that Royals player will send shout outs to those students, encourage them to read. We're being very intentional about making sure they use the name of the students, the name of the classroom, the teacher, to make it personalized. And ultimately, the goal is that we will have those players stop by the classrooms and actually meet those students. But it's the season and we can't promise that. So we definitely could at least do video. And so they spent spring training. The creative team spent time in spring training last week shooting that video and are putting it together. So it's very exciting. And so those classrooms will also be encouraged to, and some of this is just me kind of working with the teachers of each of those classrooms, trying to figure out how to, be respectful of their time as much as possible, but also how can we help you make this fun or make this, a natural extension of what you're already doing. So like some of the schools are like, oh, we will own those libraries for the school, right? We will have our students check and see what kind of books are in there so that they can talk to their fellow students about it. They will kind of just make sure it stays clean and that kind of thing, keeping an eye on it, and also giving feedback to Turn the Page around what kind of books they want to see as it moves forward. They did also do that before the first batch that Turn the Page ordered. Each school was able to give some feedback on what type of books they would like to have. So we want to be intentional about keeping that true. The third component is what we were initially kind of calling a culminating event for the pilot, which was reading with the Royals at the K. So those two classes in each school and their families. So so those 2 classes in the 9 schools gets us about 375 students. And then we're thinking if each of them brings 3 to 4 people, 4 to 5, we're kind of trying to play with that. We're looking at somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 people that might come and do a day at the K. And we're looking at May 10th right now, which is a Friday. So it would be in the evening. And the idea with that was just to reinforce the conversation around literacy, why it's important, what's happening, but we also really wanted it to be fun, right? We wanted it to be a celebration of reading, a celebration of those students that have been a part of the program, as well as the educators that have been a part of the program as well. So there had been talk about, in addition to, like information about literacy and having maybe partners who would come and share resources and things like that, we want to be able to let the students like run the bases, right? And just have a good time. But also we're looking at maybe doing a preclude to a bigger event later, which is like a readathon where we're all reading together at the same time. And maybe we'll have a Royals player reading on the big screen. And then what we would do is we're trying to connect that to a bigger event, maybe in the summer with the greater Kansas City community, where we're all reading together at the same time and seeing if we can hit a Guinness Book of World Records. So that's one of the things that could happen. But we were also reminded in our most recent advisory council meeting that week is Teacher Appreciation Week. So we're also thinking through how we can make sure to honor them on that Friday and even in the days leading up to that. So, so at this point, for me, that is the biggest thing, although each school is also doing their own kind of kickoff around this event. So I have 9 mini events at each school to help. And then we're doing this bigger event in May. So it's kind of an insane couple months that are coming up here. Plus they have spring break and map testing and, so this is what we do though, right? For community work. So you just get in there and you roll. But if you guys, if anybody, any organization is interested in somehow being a part of that May 10th event, please talk to me, because we want to try to make that as fun and creative as we can. And some of the ideas that came up in our advisory council were things related to the library's bookmobile and, maybe even the fire truck, and then having access to books while they're exploring the trucks, right? Because there's always usually a line to get in the fire trucks. And so now you might have some reading materials. So those were some of the things that we had talked about outside, but then inside, we're also looking for ways to really make it interactive and fun for those students and families. And of course, food will always be there, but, and we're looking at how do we help them with the transportation costs that it might take to get there. So, so those are kind of the big things that are coming up. We will have an official kind of press conference kickoff, March 14th. And so that's kind of the next big thing I'm gearing up for. So it's a lot of information, I know, but happy to answer any questions or see if it, connects to what you guys are doing. And I just want to say too, I've been a part of these kind of collective impact conversations and coalition building. So kudos to you all, because I know that's hard work and I know it takes time and thoughtfulness if you really want to be intentional about it. And so it's exciting to see that you guys are coming together on it and to know that there's this community building. And then I know there are parent communities that are talking about literacy and building. And I think the Royals are really just trying to figure out how do we take the unique assets that the Royals have and be a partner in this conversation. So any thoughts or questions, concerns?
Did you say you were providing transportation for the families?
Yeah, we're trying to see what that looks like. So I'm talking to the schools directly and the teachers to figure out, like, is this something where you guys could just order a bus and we reimburse you, and try to get a sense for what that would look like, how many buses you need. We also, you may have heard recently had a announcement that there's a corporate partnership with Quick Trip. And their corporate partnership is to support the literacy work as well as some other things, but they're putting a chunk of their support behind the literacy work. So there's some conversation about maybe we could do gas cards if we can't figure out the buses, because we all know buses are tight. So, but those are still conversations we're trying to have with them to see what they'd be willing to do. But yeah, we're trying to support families in that.
Yeah, it's a great partnership with between the Royals and Quick Trip. I saw that announced last week on the local news, so it's exciting.
Yeah. The interesting thing about it too is that they wanted to have a grant component. The Quick Trip wanted to have a grant component. And so ultimately the Royals decided to deepen their relationship with the 9 schools they already have, which honestly I was excited about, because you know how we start things and then we start something new and we spread it out, and then we don't necessarily have the impact that we had intended. And so the idea that, you know, what I'm focused on is like the inspiration and play and getting students excited about reading and supporting teachers in that work. But then you guys will come along with grant funds that could actually support students, support educators where they need instructional support, right? And so I think that that's going to be a fantastic addition to this work. So, and it felt intentional instead of just, oh, here we go again with something new. So, any other thoughts or questions for me? Or even red flags, you know, if you're like, hey, make sure you consider this. Open to it.
I'm not sure what all, Andrea, this is Kimberly,
Yeah.
that you all are thinking about. Are you also wanting to have some things or thoughts around resources for the parents? Because, you know, we're more on that adult space here at Literacy.
Absolutely.
Think about
Please,
that.
yes. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't make that clear, because
No, that's
Yeah.
that's
Because the thing is, otherwise, you know, we could have just done it during the day and had the schools bring them, but it was like, no, because we know that there's value in parents getting excited about reading with their students and understanding some of the small things that they can do that could even change the trajectory of what's happening right around the literacy rates for their students. So we definitely want them to feel loved at this event too. So resources, but also we're trying to figure out what can we do that would make it a good time for them as well, right? And not just for the students. So definitely open to that. Please, yeah. Absolutely. I will tell you, one of our advisory council members suggested a kind of a concert, because she was like, listen, let's make this big and make it fun. I was like, okay, let's look at this budget, but I hear you. Let's figure out what we can do. But she mentioned someone named Lil Ava. Has anybody heard of Little Ava? Okay, because she said it's Lil Ava is hot with the kids right now. I'm going to reach out to Lil Ava and I'm going to check with a few more students, because I'm like, I haven't heard from Lil Ava, but it's been decades since I've been a kid. So, but things like that, I think if we can make it work and we can figure out how the budget works and it's relevant to students to get them excited and geeked, and I can get that person to encourage reading, then we're going to figure out how to make it happen. So.
So I know the opposite of a red flag, just you know, a high compliment to you, Andrea, and the partnership. What I've heard is that the participants feel really valued, that you're, you know, that you and the Royals you're asking the experts for help and advice, which I know is greatly valued. So kudos to you for doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's so important. So I was glad to see they were doing that before I came on, but it was a big reason why I was willing to say yes. So.
Any other questions? And Andrea will be back again at our last coalition meeting, I think March 25th. I don't know if that's the exact date, but
Monday.
That last Monday that we will meet, which is about a month. So yeah.
And just feel free, it's andrea.ellis@royals.com. So if you want to reach out, have a conversation, or I'm open to it. So just let me know.
All right.
For this group, if we were to coordinate and get you some ideas for, you know, the May date, what's kind of the timeline you're thinking for that sort of input?
Yeah, I think if we had something by April 1st, going into April, that would help us, you know, in terms of marketing and promotion and all the things that have to be designed. So that would be helpful. And I will just say, I love the idea of, I will work with any organization that wants to work with this, but I love the idea of you guys doing something collectively, right? Because that reinforces the work that you're trying to do, and you know, letting people know that there is this, you know, these powerful minds coming together, I think is a strong message to send, even if you have separate things that you're doing while you're there. But if there's a way that we can let people know you're a collective, I think that would be important. So, all right, well, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see y'all in a month.
All right. All
Hopefully, I'll
right.
still be perky like this. We'll see. Have a
Yeah,
great day.
hopefully,
Thank you
hopefully the
so much
weather
for
will
joining.
still be as nice. It
That's
feels
right.
like
Here's hoping.
feels like April or May now. So yeah.
Loving it.
All right.
All
Okay.
right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrea. All right, folks. Well, I know that we're at time for a break. So I think we'll take 5 minutes now, unless there's any objections, and we'll come back and we'll get back to our conversation of the methods. All right, we're pulling everybody back. I see some blank video screens. All right, awesome. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get back to it. I know, sorry that we got interrupted with the partnerships discussion. I was just poking around a little bit with the formatting to get it a little bit more, you know, down into, you know, strategies, tactics, and actions. So if partnership is the strategy, then, you know, these could be, you know, the tactics under muses, and then breaking those down into more specific action steps. So I was just poking around a little bit with the organization, but everything is more or less where we left it. So I think, yeah, we essentially left off, if I remember correctly, with some conversation around engaging school districts and universities. It sounds like there's some support for doing that. You know, the challenge related to the school districts, given that they're, you know, have a lot of stuff going on and haven't necessarily got their own, you know, castle in order. But yeah, I think there's still definitely a lot more that we can delve into on the topic of partnerships in general. So,
Yeah, I guess I have, and I know the consultants aren't supposed to say a lot here, but I have a question about the, I mean, there was some discussion around the coalition being more focused on advocacy. And so I guess as I think about external partnerships, connections, I think the mayor's office is great, but would there be any use in identifying, you know, legislators, you know, Kansas City area, state reps, state senators, even on the Kansas side? I guess that's a question to the group, and I don't know to what extent the coalition will become a 501c4 that's really focused on, you know, advocacy versus it just being part of a, you know, a sub strategy, but not necessarily the full focus. And maybe this is just maybe this is a placeholder for right now until we know kind of where the coalition wants to end up on the advocacy, how big of a focus it is.
mhm. Yeah, I think, I mean, we heard from you all that it definitely would be a focus. So I think certainly adding legislators to the list of potential partners, unless you all disagree, we can certainly do that and then kind of put a pin on that larger question of exactly what that's going to look like. Any other reactions to, you know, the list of partners and how we're going to engage them, the approach to muses, the approach to tapping into existing national affiliations, this campaign of grade level reading, I think, was that meant to be something separate, Jenny, from national affiliations?
It's a national organization, but I
Oh,
don't
okay.
really know if it's a affiliation. Kristen might know.
Okay, so that's a potential partner then that would make sense to put more resources in. Like, and then advocacy was another focus. Any reactions or questions?
And I think where we create an advocacy plan for the team, that's where we had thought that maybe legislators and things would fit in. What's the plan? Who are we going to contact when?
Mhm. Okay. Do you guys see any gaps in any
You
of
know, I
this?
think one other
Please.
partnership area to consider is media.
Mm.
and how to ensure that we have, I mean, I was just having this conversation actually with the Royals group, because they had some issue about whether the installation of the Royals libraries was something that was a media worthy thing. And I thought, oh, talk to Linda Hughes. She'll make it media. She can make it media worthy. But I think their concern was like when media turns against you.
Mm.
Obviously Royals have many components of what they're there in the media doing. And the point I made is I think that across our organizations, we all have some really positive connections to
Mhm.
different interviewers, different, broadcasts, different, types, and really creating a cohesive set of
Mhm.
those that we go to in print or television or radio or whatever it is
Mhm.
would be beneficial.
I like that. Yeah, having essentially media that's that understands the coalition and you regularly utilize. Yeah, I love that. And help tell your narrative and get it out there. Okay. Any other reactions to partnerships for now? Okay. If none, then we can move on to group 3, data and evaluation.
That was Katie and Kimberly and me. And I think to her great credit, Katie took the lead in taking our original thinking and sorting it out, and giving it a little more clarity. Katie, do you want to jump in and talk about the way you refined the work?
I would be happy to. And I apologize for not being here at the beginning of the meeting. I've had some other things happening and I needed to be there. So I apologize. I feel a little out of sorts this morning. But yeah, so we had a really good conversation about data and evaluation, but the three of us were not able to make our schedules match up during this time. So we had to do a lot of this kind of just in the document. So mostly what I did was ask questions and figure out what would be the work of a group that might be tackling this is kind of the way I came at it. I'm not sure exactly if that is as detailed as I'm seeing some of the other groups have been able to work through, and maybe with, we could use a little bit of a do-over on timing. I think I'll be happy to own that as well. Because I did not have the time to devote to this that I would have liked. But we basically wanted to figure out what data is already out there in our community that we could leverage. Because data takes a lot of work. We all know this. If you are a data collector in any way, it takes a lot. And there's already great groups out there doing a lot of these works. And maybe our groups have numbers to contribute to that conversation as well. But then the bigger question of putting that data together in a story that outlines the impact that literacy can have on a community. So I think using some of this data and evaluation to then inform some of the work of the groups that have gone before us here. So when we're figuring out what is our advocacy conversation, data needs to be part of that story of why this is relevant, why someone should care, why someone should contribute to this cause. So we talked a little bit about that, and I put some things kind of included in that. We also talked about what kind of data is out there that isn't traditionally linked to literacy data, but clearly has an impact, whether, that's like data from adults that if they, would have had a stronger literacy base, they may have had different outcomes in their life, or how those kinds of data that maybe isn't exactly like straight education data, but other data about our community kind of pulls it all together. I think we could be the place that takes the time to pull that together, where we're not necessarily, I guess that's a gap that we identified that we could help fill. And then making sure we create this data compilation in a way that can be shared out to the community, not only for people who are on this committee or are going to be champions of the work of this committee, but also that people can feel like they understand why this is important to them as a family or to them as a parent, or them as a grandparent, that they want to care about this cause for their grandchildren. Those kinds of, if we could get to that point of impact, we would feel successful.
I think whoever's sharing screen, if you can scroll down, the kind of the refinement of the work is what's here below in yellow. And I think comparing this to the more well-organized groups ahead of us, I think we have really identified sort of 3 strategic areas, and then are just getting to what will become the tactics. With those areas being the existing data and new data, data advocacy and storytelling, and then accessibility and ownership.
Oh, I see. So these 3. Existing
Mhm.
data, new data.
I think so, yeah.
Would you be able to break those down a little bit more? I know, I mean, you've gone over maybe the major points, but catch us up on your thinking a little bit.
Probably not
I mean,
without
sure.
more time. This is where this is the point that we reached, as they were saying, like all 3 of us just trying to add in just from our own points of view to that particular document, April.
I see. Okay, so you haven't really been able to discuss it together yet.
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Yeah. Well, this is an opportunity to discuss it together with the whole group and, you know, get consensus around that. So I don't want you to feel like it has to be perfect before we can talk about it. But yeah, maybe this is a good point to ask for reactions from the group, and we can then go from there. And I won't share my screen, but the document, I'll just drop it here and it's available on Basecamp, so we can see everybody's faces.
I'm, for one, am excited about this piece. I'm excited about everything coming together in one spot and us using like-minded data for all of the funders. And I can see a lot of great potential here. One thing I wanted to share is I'm working with University of Missouri, Kansas, UMKC, the Urban Education Research Center, for a research project. And what they have told me is that they can help collect, analyze, and store forever data. And they work with Kansas City groups. So that could be potentially someone that we partner with to help us think this through and what that looks like, and store our data.
And that's the group that we've been working with in our Read 360 program, who then kind of pivoted for us and created the geomap of our organizations. And right now they're working on a more qualitative analysis of our Read 360 program. So I'd be happy to share the result of that. So we can kind of, I haven't seen their work qualitatively before, so I'm kind of excited to see where that goes. But that seems to align with a lot of the thinking that's baked into this first draft.
I think I would like to just invite others to think about what data points you all look at regularly and make sure we have them all covered here, or if there's something that you know would be useful to include that's already in existence or needs to be reviewed. Because we obviously did our mental download of that, but we know that's the kind of the strength of the coalition, right, is to get all of our opinions in there. So if there's other things, yep, Lauren, that's great. If there's other things we should be adding to this list, please let us know.
I just wanted to ask, is there a community that has a data strategy that we think is a good model?
I think that's a great question that I don't have an answer, but I think that's something to look into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So in a related field, I went to a presentation a year ago, maybe. I've lost track of time, at Children's Mercy Hospital, where they were rolling out a pretty sizable new data set and approach to data around children's health. And I don't, off the top of my head, remember all the details of it, but it was a ton of work. And my takeaway was that it was just a really new way of looking at composite data across a lot of variables. And so that might be worth talking to someone just about what went into that process.
Another organization is the Quality School Coalition, and they are they are lobbyists also in the Missouri legislature, but they also are really good about their data that they have and how they collect it. And I know that Dean Johnson, who's leads that group, is totally into data because I've worked with him before. So I think that would be a great group to also connect with.
Yeah, my thinking is like, there might be some kind of like data architecture. This is not my area at all, but I'm like, okay, there's this certain aspect of like what counts as data, who are the data gatherers, how to what degree are they collecting it, the same data, to what degree is the data going to be valid and is it going to be relevant? I mean, so just a comprehensive data strategy. And I would think that there's people that already kind of would have fleshed that out already to give us a nice boost, a nice head start. I don't know. That's just my thinking on that.
And we will be going, I think we mentioned this before, but we'll be going just with this group in the time that we have left before, the end of March. We'll spend one session dedicated to essentially developing out key performance indicators and figuring out what is the most useful data that points to your vision of Kansas City as a city of readers. So what are the outcomes and what are the SMART indicators for that, and how are we tracking them? And so that's not meant to be a comprehensive data project necessarily, but it should help, I think, kind of framing our thinking in terms of what is really important data for your mission, and how might we go about expanding that and finding partners who are good at that. So I think that'll be a really useful discussion and kind of getting us off the ground.
And to what degree do you need to be the data experts versus could your strategy include, getting data experts? Maybe maybe there's community experts who have done this already. I think, what was that guy's name? Nick Freeman?
From the Chicago
Yeah,
Collective.
like he's somebody that kind of seems to have already an app and a whole like architecture for data of what literacy is. And it might be like a great place to start. Yeah. Build upon.
Okay. Any other food for thought on the data piece? I think this is a really important one, and it helps you, think through a lot of different things in terms of like what really matters for literacy. What is the story that you're telling about literacy? How is literacy, intersecting with all of these other community problems? What is the service that you're trying to provide to the community in terms of providing accessible information? Why does the community need this information to be able to reach, your goals? So there's a lot packed into this piece, and I just want to make sure that we're thinking through that holistically as we're providing feedback, because this is the time to give feedback, guys. We only have a month left, and essentially, we'll be working on methods this time and next time, and so if you have thoughts, of course, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be eloquent. I hope people will feel comfortable at this point, just, talking through ideas together, and also following up with committees, after the fact, if you have ideas, as we're continuing to build this out.
I think one of the tactics might be to to have, 3 or 4 people really think about this. It's sometimes hard to think as a group collective, but if there's only a few of you in there, somebody's got to come up with something. So maybe have a small subcommittee that talks about what does that look like? What do we want on the dashboard? What does that look like? And then bring it to the group to say, oh, but I need something like this and I need something like this. And if the subcommittee wants to, put a survey out there that says, what, like Katie said, what data do you use? What do you want on there? They can kind of bring that information back and then see if there's still any missing points or who could do this for us or help us with it.
And then I apologize if I missed this, but in looking at evaluation, is that looking at evaluating the success of the coalition? Like we decide, here are the markers for our success. This is what we're going to tackle first, second, third, or whatever. And here's how we'll decide. Like maybe it's, do our partners weigh in like on how successful, or is it just a data point that evaluates the success of the coalition? Or am I thinking about evaluation in kind of the wrong way?
I definitely think we need to do that. And especially like April said about the KPIs, once we figure out what our goals are, there's no point of having goals if you're not looking to see if you are hitting the mark or not, right? So that definitely has to be in the mix. I don't know like where it lands, but it definitely needs to land for sure, because otherwise we're doing a bunch of work that will not have roots. So I think that makes a lot of sense, Linda.
And are we collecting data on just the efforts of the coalition members or overall literacy efforts in Kansas City? It's a subtle question that opens up a lot of complications. Yeah, but
Really important question. I mean, I think, but I think hearing April's kind of conversation a minute ago, I want to be cautious that we don't kind of just think of this. I mean, I see the phrase data clearinghouse and I see the phrase community literacy dashboard, and I really think we need to go back to our purpose, and make sure that it's our purpose that's driving this, because we can drown in this. You can spend careers in data management, and but if we're a coalition focused on developing a literacy community, then I think we need to make sure that we're compiling the data about the community, as well as that second bullet point up from the top, which are sort of our own program quality metrics. So, what's the data that's determining if we're achieving our purpose, both in terms of how the community looks and in terms of how we have moved that purpose down through strategies and tactics and actions, and are they the right ones? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, I think you're going to be able to control what you do and not necessarily the outcome, the end result. So I think obviously they should be correlated. So hopefully your work and your methods directly contribute to the change in reading levels and the outcomes that we want to achieve. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can't totally affect that. There's a lot of other factors at play, like school districts and other entities they're outside of the control of the coalition. So I think that, but this is a really important conversation.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go for it. This is how I mentally visualize it, and I look at your purpose is to be the model literate city. So I'm like, all right, what is the sustainable coalition structure of the model literate city? Who has it? Who's got the closest to it right now? And what needs to be improved upon it? And how do we do it in Kansas City? Partnerships. What does partnerships look like for the model literate city? And I'm just going to say, does it look like a coalition of 10 organizations plus a Royals organization doing things a little, you know, they're doing 9 programs in the public schools. That's a huge swath of literacy resource, effort, and to what degree is it coordinated with other things? And then if there's a parent group, I didn't know about that, but if there's a parent group, so is that what would a model literate city have, like loosely floating, or would they all be coordinated? Okay. And then what would the data look like for the model literate city? And then what would community? I don't want to, I don't know if that helps or hurts or whatever, but that's kind of where my mind goes with these, you know, how to guide these strategies a little more. All right. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, we can think of, you know, when we're building out the methods, thinking in terms of the ideal state, right? Like we kind of tentatively said, you know, on the spectrum of how like 1 through 7 in terms of coalition integration, you know, it'd be great if we were at a 7. You know, for a model literate city, what would this look like? What would the methods look like for, you know, to reach that ideal state that we want to get to? And then we can always pull it back and say, okay, that's the ideal state. What we're actually able to achieve, you know, within this time frame is XYZ. So, but definitely keeping that in mind and shooting, you know, shooting for the stars, shooting big, in terms of, yeah, trying to get to that purpose statement, that end goal of model literate city. I think, Adam, it's really helpful to have that as like an anchor of, or a mantra, you know, to keep in the back of our mind, whether or not we're able to achieve that, you know, in the short term. Okay, well, I know we are a little short on time, so I want to give the last group room to share. Group.
Community
number
outreach and
3.
engagement. Is that it?
It's me and Linda,
All right.
group 4. Linda and I were able to meet up again last week. Katina wasn't able to join us, and we don't have her here today, I don't think. I think she might be out of the office. But so there are a few loose ends there that we didn't want to completely discard without Katina there to comment on them. But we were able to refine a few of our points and kind of group things into more concise umbrellas. And Linda, please jump in at any point. Our big question after looking at all of this and like looking at all of the brain dump that we had done in our initial time during our coalition meeting was like, where do schools go? Where do they belong more in the partnership portion, or do they belong more in the community outreach and engagement portion, or is there a thread of school involvement that runs through all 4 points? We're prioritizing coming up with like a streamlined communication platform or program, basically being able to have info, like this might tie into what the data collection looks like, having all the information that we use in one place and available, be it, you know, are we all going to be using a separate email, or are we going to try to do organize things on like a Slack or Asana or something like that? Are we going to maybe we keep using Basecamp and we keep those kind of communication tools and make them available to all of our partners? And then also thinking about a literacy tool and resource hub, be it maybe online and or brick and mortar. So like an actual physical place where folks can come and get decodable readers and bilingual books and to screen video series and that kind of thing. Our next point was a marketing strategy, and that, you know, to be able to tell people about us, we need a name and we need to be on the same page with the name and be saying it the same way and be on the same page with our, you know, your parking lot speech and that kind of thing. Building a marketing strategy and having some kind of catalyzing event that could be the kickoff summit that we mentioned later. You know, branding and marketing, deciding on like external communication methods, and PR campaign with citywide or metro-wide reach. And then our final point is engaging and empowering and mobilizing individuals to take action. So we were kind of thinking of like, how do we reach out to institutions? But how do we reach out to individuals, like people who don't necessarily feel like affiliated with a school district or an organization? And basically that would means, you know, start doing brainstorming sessions and listening tours, developing and disseminating surveys, just kind of like awareness, taking the temperature of the community on, you know, what, you know, how much do they know about literacy in Kansas City? How much do they know about the resources that are out there, what they think the issues are? Hosting informational sessions, doing right to read screenings and roundtable discussions, legislative advocacy and action days, organizing days where, you know, we can all get on a bus and go to Jeff City, or, you know, like proposing concepts to city council, city hall, and then maybe as one of those mobilization efforts where people are like, hey, yeah, I want to be involved with this, but I'm just, you know, I'm a grandparent, or, you know, I'm a neighbor. Where do I, you know, how do I get involved with your coalition? Developing a flagship initiative, like a pilot initiative for folks to get signed on with. Did I miss anything, Linda?
No, no, that was fabulous. And I think what Lauren and I were kind of talking about with that single focus, you know, of we want to show the city and I guess our funders, everyone that we're planning, we're talking, we've got something, and we're going to pick a focus. Like we're going to say there are a lot of initiatives we need to tackle, but here's this first thing we're going to do that everyone can be like, oh, okay, here's how we can join in that one thing, you know, like whether it's, you know, letter sounds by kindergarten or something, I don't know. But just something specific that then everyone feels like there's a specific task to complete, you know, and so then it feels like there's more momentum to it than just, we want you to know about it. Here's like 20 different ways you can get involved. If we give them something more specific, our hope was that then people will like, oh yeah, these literacy partners are making things happen. I don't know. That's kind of what we talked about.
And then not wanting to make any decisions about what kind of angle we're going to go to before we do our listening tours and stuff like that. And because there are a lot of different really specific ways that we could start doing these things, and more specific tactics that we could use that are even like smaller gears on the outside gears. And we didn't want to get too deep in the weeds on those before we actually talk with the community.
Interesting. That's a good question, honestly, for this group, is like how far into strategic planning are we comfortable getting before getting community feedback? I don't know if anybody has an answer to that or a reaction to anything that you guys just described, but I think that is a good question for us to explore.
Well, and I think too, like when Kristen mentioned the family interviews, I mean, I think there's such potential there to figure out like what practices are going on in the home. And then if we could figure out, oh, okay, it looks like we're here, you know, on these things, but this one's a little bit lower, then that, you know, we can say this is a focus area because you know, the surveys we've conducted and the information we've all, you know, found to decide, okay, this is one angle.
This is great. I like it's well thought through. The engagement piece, I kind of think about volunteering. And so that could be a potential way to engage people, and not that we have a place for them to volunteer yet, but.
Any other reactions? Yeah, Katie.
I was just gonna say to that end, Jenny, one of the things we get at the library a lot is if there's opportunities to volunteer for like seniors or for young folks who want to like do it for A+ or different things. So if we could build that into our structure, you're gonna get buy-in from the community because there's something for them and there's something for us. And then they learn the mission while they're doing this other thing, which is something that in my mind, I've always really appreciated trying to figure out for the library because they find themselves personally involved in the library and want to see the library succeed. And I think we could get that same buy-in from our coalition if we could build that in. So I do think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you brought it up, Jenny.
Especially for folks in the wider metro, I think that's going to be really appealing. And especially for our senior citizens and stuff that maybe don't feel, aren't driving as much or aren't driving at night as much and maybe don't have the capacity to schlep all the way downtown for their volunteer opportunities.
I think it will be huge for the corporate buy-in. If you can get corporate volunteer places, they will come. They will come.
I really like the concept that you shared, Linda, and I think you threw out the sort of letters by kindergarten or whatever, picking one achievable goal that everyone can understand and everyone can buy into and everyone can kind of be led to a place of participation. And I also think that concept can be linked to our two library systems significantly because they're so familiar, they're so tangible and a part of the community in a way that pretty much everybody has access to. And I know at least one of them, I forget, they both pop up on my social media, so I forget who's who, but one of them does like 1,000 books by kindergarten or whatever, and really cute kids holding certificates and or just library cards, getting library cards. So I think there's an easy first step there with something that's familiar and using that to help the city see that libraries are part of this broad group that's doing a lot of things, but they're like that solid contact point.
And I think too, like in terms of establishing partnerships, like if, Happy Bottoms in their diaper pack distributions has a little insert from Literacy Partners about here's how you teach the letter sounds, like Children's Mercy, so much of what they distribute, if we could just get them on board with letter sounds, it doesn't seem like I'm just using that as an example, but it doesn't seem like a hard lift for them, because we're pretty much giving them a very specific, tangible add-on to what they're already doing. And I think I agree with Jenny too, from the corporate angle, like saying, presenting to businesses and, helping employees, throughout all sectors of the community. Here's an easy thing you can do with the kids that you engage with, and feeling success in that, regardless of if they're, children at your church or children that live in your house,
Well, and I think then even the 9 of us or whatever we are, making sure that element is pronounced and clear in all of our own initiatives. I mean, I think it's likely it's all getting done, but it doesn't mean it's getting the attention for getting done. So that, we're expanding ourselves, our own reach in that area broadly.
And I would like that to be kind of maybe a marketing committee where we have someone that gives us a toolbox of sorts to say, hey, this is what we're doing this month. Hey, this is what we're doing that month. Please share this. This is how you can share it. The verbiage, the links, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think like Jenny, you have great suggestions for committees. I think that's a good food for thought for the sustainable coalition structure. Like what are maybe like when we're talking about next drafts, what are like top of mind committees or priority committees that we'd want to form, shortly after getting off the ground to be able to handle that sort of thing.
It does make me wonder though, if I like the way that the Royals, they were saying it's a pilot. So it makes me wonder if, like, how do we start? Do we need to start a little small and build, and like, or do we take this really big at one?
I think we can just think of it as sort of a runway, like where do we want to start and see where it takes us down the runway.
Did April get dropped too? Interesting. Okay. Maybe it's Tulsa thing. I don't know.
Okay, guys, I know we're getting close to time. In terms of homework, I wanted to ask how you all would feel. I know that at least most of the groups were able to get feedback on their concept today. Do you feel like you'd be able to do kind of another round of polishing and developing out over the course of this week, and so that we can have another draft to see next week together?
Would we have permission to look at group one's stuff and maybe add comments to the document, since we didn't get
Yeah.
to talk about it today?
I think that's a great idea. Let's definitely, if you guys are able to do that. Tina, we can chat offline to make sure you guys feel like you have everything you need to work on group one. We can try to connect with Jillian too. Kimberly, do you know if Jillian's going to be back in town?
She will, but I think it won't be until Wednesday, so it might be a little bit crazy, but
Okay,
that's just what I know.
that's helpful. Yeah, we can. So we'll try to coordinate with group one. But Lauren, I love your idea of going ahead in the meantime. If you all can read through what they have and provide comments, I think that'll help us progress. And the other groups, if you can try to get us another draft based on comments, that'll really help us move forward. But as a reminder, next week is really it for our methods discussion. We want to try to progress that as far as possible so that we can get to some other really burning items on the agenda. One kind of added wrinkle, if you guys want to add the wrinkle, could be think about, like from our conversation, think about quick wins related to your gear. And also think about what are kind of long-term achievements, like a little bit more lofty, achievements that you're hoping to get, kind of looking at that purpose statement of, if this is for, the model literate city, what does that look like? What does the end state sort of look like? So you can think sort of in terms of a graduated approach of quick wins that we can definitely get off the ground to, what would we love to get, 5 years down the line. All right.
April,
want-
I have a question because
ahead.
this is where my brain goes, that doesn't make sense to me. And it's only because of my brain, I'm sure. So what I'm hearing you say is kind of short-term and long-term goals that are quick wins. But in my head, that's more of a method thing than it is a tactic thing. So will you distinguish what, are we still talking about methods then at that point? This is where my brain gets fuzzy, sorry.
Right, so you're still following the tactics and action steps, you're still breaking that down. But what I'm thinking is, highlighting as you're breaking down those tactics and actions, hey, this one is going to be more of a quick win. Hey, this one is a little bit more of a, we'll get there eventually, something more ambitious. And so just as you're kind of breaking down those specific tactics and actions, there should be some that kind of naturally, come forth as, hey, this is something we can do now versus something that, we're not quite ready for. Does that
Okay,
make sense?
I would have been in the weeds, so I appreciate that. I can do
Yeah,
that.
you're so welcome. I'm always, always send those questions our way.
And you can call on us too, you know, like reach out in between these meetings as well. We're happy to support all of you in what you're doing. So yeah, very good. All right, I think we're at time here. So is that where we want to leave it?
You guys know where to find us if you have any questions. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you next week. All right, bye everyone.